But when you do that also, and you are teaching people and showing them how you get done and almost giving the playbook out there, that attracts top talent and people that want to learn how to also do that. And they see it's like, okay, this is an organization that's a growth mindset. They're pushing the boundaries, and there's people here that I can genuinely learn from. You don't find that at a lot of places.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenley, and welcome to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make the change. Today, we have an amazing interview ahead of us, but before we get into that, I want to tell you a little bit more about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show. Sometimes we have interviews with industry leaders like today and others who are shaking up the space. They're going to teach you how to do something that they do that's helped them be successful. Sometimes we're going to cover trending topics, items that recruiters are talking about or will be very soon, and what those mean for them. Every Tuesday, we're going to drop a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that will help drive better results in your day-to-day, something that you can learn in 5-10 minutes, take it underway. Every now and then, we're going to have a Q&A. Listeners can drop in questions that they want to hear us take on. Send those over to podcast@loxo.co. And every now and then, you're going to hear a mic drop episode from Matt. He's going to share something that's been bouncing around in his head about the recruitment space and things you need to know about. So enough about the show. Today, I'm really excited. I've got an incredible guest joining us for the conversation. To tee it up, all right, in any services-based industry, hiring equals revenue. You need people doing delivery to grow. And today's guest has helped their company grow in size from 2021 to 2023 with 40% of their new hires citing this one specific thing as to how they heard about them. And the best part is any company can do it, whether you're at an agency, an enterprise organization, or a small but mighty team of one. Today, you're going to learn how you can start doing this within your organization. So what's this magical thing? Employee-driven content at scale. So with that, let's welcome today's guest, James Hornick, partner and chief revenue officer over at Hirewell. James, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. So yeah, this is going to be a fun one because I mean, I teed it up more or less in here, but you've been able to actually do this. So I'm excited to stop talking for a bit and really hear about this story of how you've gone about this.
Cool. So I really like a side note. All the listeners out there, I really dig the lineup for this podcast and how Sam's putting this together because it's he really kind of impressed upon me. We need to set it in a way where we're describing what the problem is, then how we go about solving it in somewhat granular detail, which I think not enough podcasts do. The challenge for us for the longest time, I've been with Hirewell for 18 years now. Like I shudder even kind of saying that. But for the longest time, we're in a very crowded industry. There's lots of recruiting firms out there. Some are great, some are terrible. But the challenge is that like you all sound kind of the same when you're talking to a candidate in an interview. And I need to say this, we're talking about things that we're doing internally to attract talent to our firm, not on behalf of our clients. So I guess that's the first thing I want to kind of mention here. Hiring people internally for the longest time was exceedingly hard. Most recruiters, most seasoned recruiters, they've worked at a couple firms before. They've heard the same song and dance. No matter how good your pitch is or how well-intentioned you are or how great your comp plan is, your culture is, the bad firms say the exact same things. And that's what's always made it very difficult, like trying to court people to join the firm. Like we have a lot of these hiring cycles where it's people we've known for years and years, and they finally kind of like, decided to kind of take a swing with us. But I think that, and then there's other organizations, the easiest way to grow is to hire really junior people and train them. Challenge with that is that anyone who kind of knows the recruiting space, one, it's very time consuming. There's a very high miss rate. You're filling your organization with, like, you need just as many people, like training these people. So that's kind of a drain on their time. Your clients typically, if you're doing any kind of really kind of solution selling or kind of high level performance and you have clients that have high expectations, they want their account managers and their recruiters to be senior people who know what they're doing, right? So, and that's not a knock on junior people, but it's a hard thing to do at scale when you're trying to really grow an organization. Not to mention a lot of those companies that do that are the exact same boiler room operations that like really kind of grind people with high stress and low pay that drive people out of the industry anyway. So, the problem is, how do we reliably get and consistently get seasoned A players who can be successful right off the bat and have them want to join us? For the longest time, we just didn't think it was possible. Like, it's just something that'll never happen, right? Wrong. We were able to figure this out. We were able to crack this nut and find a way to do it.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm really excited about this because how you went about it is how an organization I was previously at, Refine Labs, went about it as well. And so I got to see it from our side as well on how to attract some of that different talent and everything else. So I'm looking forward to hearing how you went about it and then adding in a little bit of flavor and then how we did some things like that and hopefully coming up with like, hey, here's 5 different ways, 10 different tips, things that you can take away from this conversation. Our way isn't the absolute perfect way, but there should be plenty of little nuggets in here that you can start applying today.
Yeah. And I have to say this next part. Well, even before I get there, I think this is an essential way to grow any good services-based firm where, as you said, kind of leading into the show, where you need people to drive revenue. Content, as we kind of said, I first, giving you some kind of backstory on this, I was a tech recruiter for 10 years. I launched Hirewell's marketing and recruiting practice around 2015. And that was right around the time when digital became mainstream. So like when all of a sudden, like every company who had never done anything remotely sexy or interesting or new or cutting edge with marketing started throwing money at digital. That's when we kind of jumped into to recruiting for those types of people. But myself personally, that's when I started talking to marketers like every day of the week. And after a while, it's like, why aren't we doing this? And all these kind of more cutting edge things. And I decided to go all in on learning how to do content. And for me, it's like a lot of video, a lot of writing, a lot of like, those are kind of the 2 things I would focus in on. I went into it on the idea that it would help us drive business, which it did. But as we started kind of looking at the numbers and everything like this, we started to see it was much easier to get more and more people interested in joining our organization. Like we just kind of noticed when I was just doing it kind of myself with no one else, there are more and more people who would say, hey, I saw James posting on LinkedIn, or I saw that you guys are doing this cool video thing, because like no one else does this in our space, basically. And then we decided to really kind of go find ways. We built out an entire playbook. We built out what we call our brand ambassador program so that we could actually as I started having success with it, getting the rest of the organization doing it. So it was more of a concerted effort across the entire organization. And it did a few things. One, we used to be a very Chicago focused organization where it was just people knew us about, because we were like a local market. And this is before the pandemic, 2019, kind of around that time frame. We became more known nationally. There are a lot of people now that we have clients all over the country that we wouldn't have had access to. People who have kind of reached out to us from inbound. Inbound's roughly 20% of our inbound funnel, of our funnel, which is a lot. But again, in services, it really comes down to like relationships. So like most of our business still comes from existing people we know, people we placed previously that became hiring managers, or referrals they're able to get us. But we noticed that more and more of those people started reaching like, this year, prime example, there was a gentleman who I got an interview for in like 2007 who declined the offer. I had not been in touch with. He was like hard to get a hold of, but turns out the guy's on LinkedIn and watches my podcast all the time and reached out to me out of the blue this year and made a bunch of hires from, because he's like, yeah, I love your stuff. I've been following along. So like this stuff does work. But again, that was the original thought, was like, okay, we need to get this to kind of drive business. But it's that hiring aspect. So like the numbers specifically, as you said, the 40% number is correct. We went from 50 employees to 120 employees between 2020 and 2022. So basically a 2-year period, it was like a massive amounts of growth. And it was all just, whether it was LinkedIn or our podcast or the people we have on using TikTok or all these kind of different channels and stuff like that, we just became, I think, one, it's having a higher brand presence, but 2, it's the way we have zero guardrails. We tell people explicitly, you can say whatever you want and talk about whatever topics you want to. And I think, and it really taps into people are very guarded. Like I said, when we started this off, all recruiting firms sound the same to someone who's interviewing at a recruiting firm, whether you're one of the good ones or one of the bad ones, because they all say the same things. It's what your employees say that make a difference. So if you're an owner, if you're the hiring manager somewhere, like you might be completely being honest, but people still will be very guarded and think you're full of it. But if they see the people on your team, they're people to be their peers, saying how much they like the company or talking about what they ever want to talk about, they realize it's different, because not all firms will let them do that. most organizations are so guarded, and only the marketing people and only certain people have access to actually be the voice of the company, that they assume everything is like central marketing process BS where they only want certain things getting out. But if you've got 30 people at your company who are just like say whatever they want to, and they're just I don't know if they're just straight up shit posting on LinkedIn or whatever they want to do. Like they realize these guys are legit. Like these people actually believe this. They believe them when they say they like what they're doing, they like the work, or they like their takes. If they have opinions on the industry that are very counter to what those people watching it are thinking, and they can identify with it. Like they're going to remember, and that's how we got so many people interested in us. So
I love it. Yeah, we're going to go deep on that because we're going to start getting into teach us, get tactical with that and enabling your team. Want to go back a second to something that
Sure.
you're talking about and how you started first thinking about content was more of the biz dev side. And it's like, we need to drive business and everything else. And I think that's where it's so fascinating because you did quickly learn, and others will see this is almost like two birds with one stone approach because it will do the biz dev side. So, especially for a services company, there's God knows how many agencies out there, places that you could go with. When you're a services company, you have to almost give a preview or show the value that you'll drive, the expertise that you have, the knowledge that you will bring, and the results that you can drive, help them achieve. So you have to get that in front of them first to stand out a little bit differently. So that's the one interesting side is like when you do start teaching and creating that content that does illustrate that versus like, come book a time with us and then I'll tell you about how smart I am. Like it doesn't work like that anymore.
Yeah.
You have to proactively do that. But when you do that also, and you are teaching people and showing them how you get done and almost giving the playbook out there, that attracts top talent and people that want to learn how to also do that. And they see it's like, okay, this is an organization that's a growth mindset. They're pushing the boundaries and there's people here that I can learn from, genuinely learn from. You don't find that at a lot of places. So I think that's the other side of it, where when people do see that, they're like, that'd be a really cool place to go. And whether it's, a couple years to learn and grow from, or to be there for a career, I know I'm going to have people surrounding me that are constantly, they want to learn, they have that mindset. So, I just think it's an interesting point that many people, I don't know if they don't realize it when they get started, but it's not one or the other. You're really going to get both of these effects if you do it well.
Yeah. And like I said, in services, they're also interrelated. Like you need the people to drive the growth. So like more people is revenue. The other thing I was going to say too, before we even kind of get into this particulars of how to put this together, you also start attracting the right people. It becomes like a filter. The people who see what you're doing and they like your message and they like the way you go about it and they see what your teammates are talking about. Like, it becomes easier to attract people who also want to make content or have these same opinions and those types of things. So it really does kind of get, it does a good kind of top of the funnel filtering process for new talent as well. So,
yeah, perfect. All right. So you're talking a little bit about guardrails. Let's get into the teaching us, how you can start going about this. So, I'm sure you've got some prerequisites, things that need to be in place before you start on it. What are some of those?
Well, the thing I'll disagree with you on, I think you said before, like when it started, like anyone can do this. Anyone can't do this.
Anyone could do this.
You can't suck. That's like the first thing, is that you can't fake it. If there's a bell curve, the people on the bottom end of the bell curve that legitimately aren't great places to work, where their employees aren't happy, like you can't do it. There's no way around it. There's not to rant on like bad recruiting firms or bad marketing firms or bad any organizations where you've got your executives who are completely disconnected and they're living in la la land where they think everything's great, or they legitimately don't care that like their employees aren't happy. Like they can't do this. They never will. I think it's important that you're realistic in kind of where you are as an organization, and separate from all this, and I don't think this is a prerequisite for it, but we do a lot of employee engagement surveys and efforts like that to make sure that our team is as happy as we hope they are. And when we find out that there are things that maybe we're lacking in, we actively try to do whatever we can to kind of make those things better. So I just want to throw that out there. Like, this isn't something you can fake. It won't work for everyone. But if you do feel strongly about the fact that you have a strong culture and you care about your employees and you do believe that they're happy and they're into this kind of thing, you are the kind of firm that can go all in on this and it'll work.
So you can't fake it. It's not for everyone. Do you make everyone do this? Does every
No.
employee at the company have to do this? Okay.
No, optional. It's the kind of thing where I think that it's very much a lead by example thing. And I think that's probably the first thing you need to do to make this work. I am we'll turn this like its own interview question. Like, what are your faults? My fault is I'm obsessive compulsive about certain things. I go all in on them and I don't stop until they work, which is, I guess, a positive. I was so when I first got into content, I was so sure it would work that, and I'm sure you've heard this too, no one gets a lot of traction the first 6 months they do it, which is why everyone burns out and stops. Or they don't, that combined with the fact that maybe they just don't like it. For me, I was so short at work and I legitimately enjoy writing. Like I enjoy shit posting. I enjoy making jokes. I enjoy long form blog posts. I enjoy just, I like taking complex topics and breaking them down in a snarky way that's actually relatable and actually helps people. So I've been able to kind of stay with it and stick with it. But if I wasn't doing it, and I'm not saying that to like pat myself on the back, but you have to have someone who's kind of in leadership taking that kind of approach where they're going to stick to it and do it no matter what, because everyone else in the organization isn't going to do it or see the value in it unless they see you doing it or someone else there. Because I just don't know how it would work. When they see you doing certain things, they realize that's allowed, or they see like you like making kind of snarky jokes, they realize they can do that too. Because no one would have the stones to do that if like they didn't see like someone else like in leadership doing it. You know what I mean? So it's not going to happen on its own. And I think that's the other thing too, is like you can't hire someone to do this for you. Like it's got to be someone who like, not all your leaders have to do it, but you at least have one or two that are kind of like actually believe in it, want to make it happen.
Yeah, no, that's a couple of big things in there. One, it's like, yeah, well, you have to have the leader do it. And I've been in organizations where you see the very sterile corporate posts that come from leadership. And then you're just like, all right, those are the guardrails that I have to post within if I want to do this. Well, that's boring. I'm not going to do that for 6 months and just be like, come check out our ebook. I don't know. Like, come check out this new reward we got from G2. I don't care about that. Like, that's where you look at the things that you talk about, you empower your team to talk about that many organizations who succeed in things like this. Go look at, Gong, Lavender, like any of the companies you see all over LinkedIn right now. They have very distinct points of view, personalities, and you can tell there's a person behind it that is a little bit unfiltered. So that's part of why it's so relatable and impactful.
I think in those early days, one of my favorite videos I shot was, or one of the quotes I had, and it was, contingent recruiting is the dumbest business model in the history of business models. And I think that really set the tone for the rest of the organization. Like, you just go ahead. And we were doing contingent recruiting, a lot of it at that point in time. Just like, feel free to let it rip, guys. So I guess that's the thing. It's like no guardrails. Giving permission, I think, is the thing people struggle with the most. And like, you have to let people know they're allowed to talk about whatever they want to. Everyone, from a leadership standpoint, the reason why most companies struggle with this is because they're so deathly afraid of like the worst case scenario and like the rogue employee who's going to say something dumb and it's going to wreck their entire business. But like, it doesn't happen. Like, I've never seen it happen. I think in the history of our, like right now, we probably have 15 to 20 people that like do this stuff regularly. Maybe once someone said something that like a client was kind of rubbed the wrong way a little bit, but in the grand scheme of things, like, who cares? Like, it's like when you see all the upsides we've kind of gained from this, and like maybe we like one time in 3 or 4 years of, like 20 people times 3, let's say 3 posts a week times 52 weeks a year, like it's nothing, you know what I mean? It's like, and then like, sorry guys, like didn't mean to, like, that wasn't about you kind of like thing, like, it's not. And I can, there's a world where someone says something like truly foul, you know what I mean? But like, what, would you have that person working at your company anyway? You know what I mean?
That's
it's like, what
thing.
are you really worried about?
Exactly. That's one thing I always come back to is like, that's almost on you. If you hired that person and when you're in services, that means you're also putting them in front of clients, let alone worried about what they're posting on social. I mean, different issue in and of itself. Yeah. So I know you say no guardrails. I have one guardrail. I just say, you're welcome to post whatever you want. My one rule, just use common sense. That's it. Like, if you would say this to a person's face, if you would go and tell this to your grandmother at dinner, if you would go do like things like that, like that's really as far as I'll say. Like that gives you a pretty wide range, though.
I mean, I agree with that. I think that goes without saying, though. You know what I mean? Like that's one of those ones where
welcome
like,
to 2023.
Yeah, true. Okay. In terms of like making it work, though, I think that the first thing you have to do, and this is where I'll take a big self. I don't want to get into this in terrible amount of detail, but like, because one of my biggest things to make fun of everyone on LinkedIn is like posting about posting. Like, there's no worse content out there as I say this, and what's going to become content is like the ABCs of how to like make a post on LinkedIn. You know, but internally you need that. Even though we're in an age where most people have grown up with social media, most of anyone Gen Z and most of your millennials, like it's like Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff kind of comes second nature. Most people still don't quite know how to create content or kind of what goes into it. So you do need to we build out an entire book that kind of in a training session we do that just tells people the basics of kind of what to do, what to expect, just so they have a little bit of guidance in terms of what works and what doesn't work. But we also say then, feel free to experiment, kind of do whatever you want. But like, these are some best practices we've kind of come up with. So that's one. The second thing, which I think is honestly the most important, and I've given this advice to everyone, not just from a content perspective, but from a customer messaging perspective and industry insights perspective, is we have a brainstorming session regularly scheduled every 2 weeks, open to the entire company, which gets pretty good attendance. It might be like a light week might be 10 people, a heavy week might be 25, but a lot of people kind of show up to these, where all we're doing is 30 minutes of brainstorming, like what is happening right now in the market? What challenges do our clients have? What questions are our clients asking you? What recurring struggles have you noticed in the past couple of weeks? Maybe flip it, maybe to like, what candidates are or what challenges are you seeing job seekers and candidates have out there? But trying to like pull what's the latest that we're seeing real time in the market, as opposed to just like latching on to what everyone else is talking about, which I think is a huge differentiator, because I think that's one of the things that's kind of set us apart too, is we're not just regurgitating the same stuff everyone else is. Because as you see on social media, someone talks about one topic or a story comes out, then everyone's got to chime in on it. But if you can like pull your own insights, but you're actually getting it from your clients, that's huge. Because I've always said the best, whether it's blog topic, video topics, if someone asks you a question because they need your help with something, there's hundreds of other people that have the same question. If you're a recruiter out there, you probably talk to recruiters every day, and you all have the same knowledge base. So you think everything is common sense. You think everything in your head, everyone else already knows this, so no one's going to find it interesting. But you forget that your clients or candidates or whoever else there is listening, they don't know what's in your head. That's why they're working with you in the first place. All the things you take for granted, that's your knowledge base, they have no idea about these things. If they did, they wouldn't need you. Like, this industry wouldn't exist. So it's how do you pull those things out of your own mind to realize, okay, this is something that is relevant, because it's hard to do, like when you don't have that kind of outside perspective. But the best way to do it is, what have your clients asked you? What new challenges have they seen? What have you helped them out with? Those things 10 times out of 10 will make good content topics.
Yeah, and that's such a good point. That's one of the things that I learned at my last organization is things that are obvious to you are not obvious to 99% of other people. And not in a bad way. You just have a very specific skill set of experiences, conversations that have been had. So that, yeah, to your point, is share that. Don't be shy to. You'll either have people that start engaging with it and adding on to it. Two, they'll disagree with it. And I say, bring the disagreement. That's how you learn also. Don't be defensive about it, but just say like, I didn't think about that. That's an interesting point of view. Now I'm going to apply that, learn again, see how that pans out. So, but I do want to be a fly on the wall in those brainstorm ideas. I would love to hear some of that. So separate conversation for another time, but
I could maybe invite you along sometime. I don't know. It's, I think, and the other thing about this too, is that, especially when you're remote, it's huge, like community building internally. Because I think that ourselves, we have like 8 different divisions in recruitings. We have tech and HR and finance and marketing and sales, insurance, real estate. There's another one, manufacturing. And silo syndrome becomes a real thing. Like the tech team, like they all talk constantly. The marketing team, they all kind of talk constantly. But how do you get a lot of the things we do for clients? They're people working across divisions, or might be working on 5 different skill sets and trying to work cohesively together as a team. Any way you can build meetings like this, where people from all over the organization can kind of like meet up, chat, get to know each other better, interact with people they wouldn't interact with on like during normal business like type stuff, is huge. So I think that's another kind of like, that's not the intention of this, but that's just another like positive benefit of kind of doing these types of meetings.
Yeah, drawing parallels of what other people are seeing coming across. It's like, I forget, people say you learn more from fiction books than you do from reading nonfiction type thing, where it's like you get these ideas from sci-fi novels or dystopian future. I know I'm going a little extreme with those, but it's that point. It helps you connect the dots when you see these things in just completely different environments that you can then tie back into your own. It's like, oh, I'm going through something similar. It's different context a little bit, but I can apply that, how they went about solving it or whatever the macro learning is. So yeah, I do like that. I bet your team, the feedback loop, the flywheel of how quickly you learn and adjust to everything is probably a lot faster than what most other agencies experience. The
thing that's it drives me crazy is you have to tie it together with some sort of real-time messaging. So we're a Google shop. So we have like they change their messenger, like they're on their 8 different variation of it, whatever it's called nowadays. Google Chat, I think is what everyone calls it. I don't think it's actually called that. We have a lot of different space. If you're on Slack, we always have a space where anytime like someone's kind of publishing something, making sure they kind of link it to the rest of the organization's aware. Just because part of it too for us is not just the posting content and stuff out there, but it's the little bit of jokes and trash talk in the comments. You know what I mean? Because I think that's another thing that kind of built our personality out there, is like when you see me and Jeff Smith and Matt Masucci and some other people like just making fun of each other in the comments all the time. Like that also kind of adds for the personality, and the whole organization does that. So I think that's kind of a crucial thing too, is just making sure everyone is aware, because we're recruiters, so we're on LinkedIn all day, but we're actually doing our jobs most of the day, not just playing around on social media. So letting everyone aware when stuff has been posted is kind of a key thing too, to bring it all together.
Yeah, and that's one last point that I did want to touch on. It's almost like, what roadblocks or challenges would people come up against? And time and again, I keep hearing our CEO says, if I'm spending time on LinkedIn posting, I'm not working, or, insert whatever social media platform where your audience might be spending their time. When in fact, it's like, is it an educational thing, or is that a CEO that you're just going to be chasing your own tail the whole time, trying to figure out how do I explain this to them, and they're just never going to understand it?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts on CEOs who don't understand marketing, I'm sure, are very similar to yours. Like, you can't teach people into that and what the value is. Like, they're just never going to get it. So
yeah, I love it. Well, this was great. So, I mean, I guess we had to distill it down to a couple takeaways. I've got a few. Probably have you toss them in. It's like, 1, lead by example. If you don't lead by example, it's not going to necessarily pan out well. Guardrails, try to keep them as minimal as possible. Team support from ideation to engagement are absolutely critical. What am I missing here?
Let me go through my notes here again too. So don't suck as an organization. Leader has to go all in. No guardrails. Build out a training. Schedule regularly scheduled meetings. Have some sort of internal laps. Everyone's aware. One other thing I want to mention too, real quick, was that although I did talk about the brainstorming kind of session to give us good topics, another part of why I know guardrails is important is that different people out there who could be interested in your organization, they're all going to be attracted to different things. So there are some people that have mentioned, oh, I like James's content, but there's other people in the organization that talk about more like not serious or not like the takes I do. They might be talking more about their own kind of personal life or making more jokes or whatever. There's different people who are going to be attracted to different types of online personalities, if we want to call it that. And that's why it's important to like have some diversity in the types of people what people talk about, because a lot of people in the organization, like some of them probably never even saw my post ever, or they might not have see like Matt's post or Jeff's post. You know what I mean? There's also value in having different people talking about different things, which is also why like guardrails is important not to have them. But the last thing I was going to kind of throw out there too is making sure people like start to see how this works for them, because everything we've talked about is what helps us hire and what helps potentially bring in more business. But we also have it kind of set up where, luckily, as a recruiting firm, like it's it helps people find people more easily, especially if they're in a real niche industry. It also helps them kind of acquire more clients. So helping them kind of understand long-term approach, like this is also going to benefit you in terms of like your sales goals and stuff like that too. And when they start to see kind of both things happening, that's when they become all in and really get it. So,
man, this is a masterclass. I love this. We're gonna definitely have to have a part 2, part 3, part 4 at some time. But yeah, I mean, that's the episode. I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come and join us on the show. I know I appreciate you sharing this knowledge with us, and I know it's going to inspire other recruiters to start incorporating this in their day-to-day, hopefully their larger organizations as well. So, all right, everyone, that's the show. That's it. This was a phenomenal interview with James. So until next time.
Thanks for having me.